October 14th, 1942. Dawn's gray light barely pierces the smoke over Stalingrad's shattered factory district. Senior Lieutenant Vasily Ignatov, a 32-year-old civil engineer from Leningrad turned Red Army sapper, crouches in the rubble of the Barrikady gun factory's north wall, his calloused hands packing wet sand into burlap sacks. His breath fogs in the biting Volga wind. You can almost feel the grit between your teeth, the metallic tang of blood and cordite in the air. Around him, his squad of 12 exhausted sappers, faces blackened by soot, stack the bags feverishly, their shovels scraping against twisted rebar like nails on a coffin lid. Ignatov wipes sweat from his brow, eyes locked on the southern approach, a 200-meter-wide kill zone of open ground funneled by bombed-out buildings. German panzers have been probing here for days, their 88mm guns turning Soviet positions into charnel houses. "Higher, comrades! 2 meters at minimum!" he growls in a low rasp, voice steady despite the distant rumble of tracks. He's no frontline infantryman. Before the war, he designed bridges over the Neva. But 3 weeks of house-to-house hell have taught him rubble alone won't stop a Panzer IV. Sandbags will. Dense, immovable barriers channeling the beasts right into his trap. The wall rises fast, improvised from looted mill sacks filled with Volga silt, reinforced with scrap iron and shattered concrete slabs. It's not elegant, 80 meters long, curving like a shepherd's crook to force tanks left into a narrow chute flanked by anti-tank guns. Ignatov sketches the final layout in the dirt with a bayonet tip. Kill zones marked with PTRD anti-tank rifles hidden in basements. Molotov cocktails stacked in alcoves. T-34s buried hull down behind the curve. His men whisper doubts. A runner from 284th Rifle Division reports Paulus's Left First Corps massing 40 tanks for a dawn assault. Ignatov silences them. They come straight, they die straight. As the first pink streaks hit the sky, spotters yell from a gutted chimney, "Panzers! 40 panzers! Infantry behind!" The ground trembles. Ignatov ducks into a foxhole, heart pounding like a diesel engine. Lead elements, Panzer IIIs and IVs of the 14th Panzer Division, lumber forward at 20 kilometers per hour, turrets swiveling, MG-34s chattering. They hit the sandbag wall dead on, 75mm shells slamming home. Bags erupt in geysers of sand, but the barrier holds. Ignatov's dense packing absorbs the blasts, barely denting. The lead tank slews left, exactly as planned, chain reacting the column into the chute. Anti-tank gunners open up from concealed nests. A PTRD round punches through a Panzer IV's tracks at 300 meters. Boom! It slews helpless. Molotovs arc from above, shattering on engine decks, flames whooshing up hatches. Hidden T-34s bark from rubble piles, gutting 3 more in crossfire. Screams echo as German infantry dismount into machine gun lanes. Ignatov's wall has turned a blitz into a slaughter. 18 panzers burning in 20 minutes, the assault shattered. He peers out, tasting victory's ash, but radios crackle. Reserves incoming, bigger guns. How long can sand hold steel? Ignatov grips his PPSH submachine gun, its wooden stock slick with sweat, as the second wave rumbles into view. Bigger beasts this time. Panzer IV Ausf F2s with long-barreled 75mm KWK-40s that spit high-velocity death. The air thickens with diesel fumes and the acrid bite of burning rubber. You can feel the heat from the first wrecks radiating like open furnaces, painting the sandbag wall in flickering orange. His sappers reload PTRD rifles with trembling hands, bottles of naphtha kerosene mix glinting in the firelight. Each man knows this is do or die. The Volga at their backs, no retreat. The lead Ausf F2, commanded by Oberleutnant Karl Weber of the 14th Panzer's 1st Abteilung, slams into the barrier's curve at full throttle, tracks chewing rubble. Shell after shell hammers the sandbags. Ignatov's genius holds again. The dense-packed silt avalanching down, but reforming like wet clay under pressure. Weber screams orders over the intercom. "Flank left! Bypass!" His column funnels tighter into the chute, just as designed, engines roaring in blind panic. From basement slits, Soviet 45mm guns, veterans of the tractor works defense, crack like thunder. AP rounds slicing through side armor at point-blank range. One PZ-4 erupts, turret blown skyward in a fireball, crew bailing into waiting PPSH bursts. Ignatov dashes forward under cover, directing fire with barked commands. "Molotovs on the skirts! Rifles! Tracks first!" A bottle shatters against a tank's rear deck, igniting fuel lines. Flames crawl up the exhaust, forcing the driver to bail. German grenadiers swarm forward in the chaos. STG-44 prototypes barking from hips, but Soviet DSHK heavy MGs from upper stories rake them down like wheat. You hear the screams, taste the cordite, see Ignatov's face etched with grim focus as he personally triggers a satchel charge under a bogged Stug 3, the blast ripping its belly open in a shower of shrapnel. By noon, 29 panzers smolder in the kill zone. Paulus's push bled white. First Corps pulls back, licking wounds. But victory's bitter. Ignatov's squad is down to 6. Young Private Yuri lies gutshot, gasping about his girl in Saratov. Radios buzz with Zhukov's praise from across the Volga, but scouts report engineers among the German dead sketching the wall. Photos snapped, notes taken. Whispers spread. The Fritzes will copy it. Worse, night falls with Nebelwerfers whistling in, gas shells bursting yellow fog over the factory ruins. Ignatov reinforces the breach points, but exhaustion claws deep. As stars prick the smoke veil, he wonders, if sand stops tanks once, what happens when they learn to wield it too? Ignatov slumps against a sandbag still warm from impacts, his fingers tracing the jagged scar where a 75mm round grazed the wall's apex, sand grains sifting like hourglass blood. The night air bites harder now, laced with the greasy reek of charred panzer steel and the faint, sickly sweet of unburied dead piled in the chute. His remaining sappers huddle close, sharing a dented canteen of watery kasha, eyes hollow but fierce. They've held the Barrikady line when regiments crumbled, yet the cost etches deeper lines on Ignatov's face. You can hear the distant Volga lapping, a mocking whisper of home against the hellish symphony of moans and settling rubble. Dawn creeps in gray, revealing the carnage. Twisted hulls like beached leviathans, black crosses stark against soot. German recovery teams daring no closer under Soviet scopes. Ignatov rises, barking orders to widen the chute's inner lip, add more curve, layer in razor wire from wrecked fences, camouflage the anti-tank nests with factory ash. Word filters from runners. Paulus fumes in his forward HQ, poring over salvage sketches of the wall radioed to OKW. Genial but crude, Hitler reportedly snarls in Rastenburg, ordering immediate copies for the Italian front. Ignatov's heart sinks. His desperate hack is already evolving in enemy hands. By midday, probes resume. Not panzers, but engineers in half-tracks, probing with Bangalore torpedoes and flamethrowers. Ignatov spots it first. A makeshift barrier rising 150 meters out. Sandbags stacked by German sappers mimicking his crook design, channeling their own assault into a mock kill zone. It's flawed, too shallow, bags too loose, but it funnels Soviet counterprobes from T-34s of the 37th Guards into MG-42 nests, buying Paulus time. Ignatov's men cheer bitterly as he adjusts fire. They steal our teeth, we bite harder. A brutal afternoon seesaw follows. His reinforced wall devours another 5 panzers, but German copies spring up across the tractor works, turning Stalingrad's ruins into a mirror war of barriers. Exhaustion gnaws as dusk falls. Private Sasha, barely 19, clutches a salvaged Luger from a dead Oberleutnant, its grip still warm. "They fight like us now, Tovarish," he mutters. Ignatov nods, scanning the horizon where new flares arc. Chuikov's 62nd Army digging parallel walls along the Volga front. But scouts whisper of a massive buildup. 100-plus tanks massing south, barriers evolving with teller mines embedded. Sand versus sand. As Nebelwerfer screaming mimes howl overhead, Ignatov packs the final sack, muscles screaming. Will his wall hold when the enemy wields it better? Ignatov hammers a steel rod into the wall's base, anchoring a new layer of bags against the shuddering earth, each blow echoing like a heartbeat in the choking dust. The German barriers multiply overnight, crude twins of his design sprouting like malignant weeds across the factory district. Crooked walls funneling T-34 probes into Pak-40 kill sacks, their 75mm rounds hulling Soviet tanks at 500 meters. You feel the irony twist like a bayonet. The Volga wind carries faint German shouts, sappers barking, "Schnell, wieder Russe!" as they pack looted grain sacks with rubble, aping Ignatov's dense silt technique. His creation, born of desperation, now haunts the ruins from both sides. A runner from Chuikov's HQ bursts through the lines, face streaked with blood. Pioneers copying everywhere. 14th Panzers teaching the 305th Infantry. Paulus wants the city pocketed by dawn. Ignatov curses under his breath, eyes narrowing on a half-track creeping forward under smoke, disgorging engineers with captured Soviet shovels. They erect a barrier just 300 meters out, teller mines buried in its shadow, forcing his scouts to veer into enfilade fire. Retaliation comes swift. Ignatov signals his DSHKs, 50 cal rounds chewing through the enemy wall like termites, exposing their guns. 2 Sturmpanzers grind forward behind it, 380mm mortars belching earthshakers that crater the ground. But his chute drinks the blasts, spitting the wrecks into PTRD range. The battlefield fractures into a deadly chessboard. Soviet walls birth German counters, each side layering denser, deadlier. Ignatov's squad ambushes a Fritz sapper team at dusk, seizing blueprints smeared with Volga mud. Precise measurements, his crook angle replicated at 32 degrees, even notes on silt compaction. "They learn fast," he growls, torching the papers. But the seeds sown. Night counterattacks rage. A Soviet T-34 platoon slams a copied barrier, tracks snapping on hidden charges. Flames light the sky as Ignatov redirects Molotovs over the top, turning it against its makers. Casualties mount. Sasha loses an arm to shrapnel, binding it with his own belt as Ignatov drags him back, whispering promises of medals and mothers. By false dawn, the air hums with tension. Paulus masses 60 tanks behind a grand barrier evolution, double-layered, with flanking ditches and nested MG pits, a Frankenstein of Ignatov's brainchild. Soviet probes falter, bleeding tanks into the maw. Ignatov stares across no man's land, sandbags mirroring sandbags under tracer fire. His wall, savior turned scourge, teeters on exhaustion. Radios crackle with orders from the 284th, hold or die. But as the first Maybach engines growl to life, a deeper rumble builds from the east. Zhukov's reinforcements? Or the end of the barricade game? Ignatov wipes blood from a gash on his forehead, the copper tang mixing with sweat as he heaves another slab of rebar-laced concrete onto the wall's crown. Every muscle screams mutiny, but surrenders not in the silt. Across the scarred earth, the German masterpiece looms larger. A 120-meter behemoth of double-stacked bags, razor coils glinting like serpent scales, flanking POC 40s peeking from mock rubble hides. You hear the Maybach roar crescendo. Feel the ground pulse under 60 tons of converging steel. Panzer IVs and Stug 3s lurch forward in echelon, infantry hugging the barrier's shadow. STG-44s probing for weakness. Ignatov's copied design, refined by Wehrmacht precision, now devours his own probes. A T-34 from the 37th Guards slews into its chute, erupting in a geyser of flame as mines claim its tracks.
"Fire high! Clear the nests!"
Ignatov bellows, his voice raw gravel over the din. His DSHKs chatter defiance, ripping into the enemy wall's face, bags shredding in sandy avalanches that expose screaming sappers below. PTRD teams nail a lead AUSF-G through the eye slit, the turret crew's muffled shrieks cut short by secondary blasts. But the Germans adapt mid-assault. Oberleutnant Weber, scarred survivor of the first wave, radios flanking maneuvers, his panzers splitting around Ignatov's crook to hit the wall's blind flank. Shells pound home, finally breaching a 10-meter gap. Grenadiers pour through, bayonets fixed, only to meet Ignatov's ambush. Satchel charges rigged in the rubble detonate in chain lightning, burying dozens under tons of debris. Chaos reigns as lines blur. Soviet and German sappers clash hand-to-hand amid the barriers, shovels clanging like swords, PPSH bursts trading with MP40 snaps at 5 paces. Ignatov guns down a Fritz Pioneer clutching a Bangalore torpedo, wrestles a flamethrower operator whose burst singes his sleeve before Yuri, arm-bandaged, eyes feral, crushes the man's skull with a rock. The walls bleed into one another, sand mingling in no man's land, kill zones overlapping in mutual slaughter. Paulus's push stalls at 40% losses, but Ignatov's squad shrinks to 4. Yuri slumps lifeless, a 7.92mm round through his throat, gurgling Saratov's name one last time. Flares pop overhead, painting the melee infernal red. Radios scream conflicting orders. Chuikov demands counter B thrusts, but scouts yell of a new horror. Luftwaffe spotters circling, Stukas diving with 500-kilogram bombs targeted on every barrier, Soviet and German alike. Ignatov drags his men into the wall's lee as the wail builds. Bombs walk the earth, turning barricade twins into craters. His holds barely, bags vaporized, but core intact. Dust settles on smoldering duplicates. Weber's voice crackles captured on a looted set. The Russian engineer's wall. Unbreachable. Copy failed. Dawn hints at respite, but IL-2 Sturmovik's drone west. Retribution incoming? Or Paulus's final gambit? Barriers be damned? Ignatov coughs through the dust veil, ears ringing from the Stuka dives, his fingers clawing at a half-buried PPSH as the world swims in gray haze. Shattered sandbags litter the churned earth like the entrails of slain giants. His wall stands defiant, a jagged stump amid craters where German copies lie pulverized, twisted rebar clawing skyward like accusing fingers. You taste the acrid bite of high explosive. Feel the Volga wind shift, carrying the drone of radial engines growing louder, fiercer. IL-2 Sturmoviks, Chuikov's black angels from the eastern bank, swooping low over the Volga bend. The air vibrates with their guttural growl. RS-82 rockets slung under wings like Avengers' quivers.
Take cover! Airburst incoming! Ignatov rasps, shoving his last 3 sappers, grizzled Sergeant Petrov and 2 wide-eyed recruits, into a basement slit. The first wave screams in, 23mm cannons stitching the German lines, rockets slamming Paulus's grand barrier in blossoms of fire that hurl panzers end over end. Weber's Ausf G, flagship of the assault, erupts as a rocket cores its ammo rack, turret cartwheeling 50 meters into a factory wall. Grenadiers scatter like ants, their copied walls no match for aerial fury. Bags ignite, mines cook off in sympathetic chains, turning no man's land into a cauldron. Ignatov peers out, heart surging. For the first time, the enemy barrier crumbles faster than his own, sand raining like defeat.
Petrov slaps his shoulder, grinning through cracked lips. Our birds eat their steel, tovarish. But joy sours quick. Flak 88s bark from the southern heights, tracers lacing the sky, nicking 2 IL-2s that spiral smoking into the Volga. Ground fighting reignites. Surviving Stugs grind forward blindly, ignoring barriers now, desperate to punch through. Ignatov leads a counterdash, Molotovs arcing into view slits, his squad's PTRDs cracking from the ruins. One behemoth slews past the gap in his wall, only to bog in a hidden ditch. Ignatov plants a satchel personally, the blast ripping its underbelly as he dives clear, shrapnel whistling past his ear. The melee peaks in frenzy. Soviet T-34 reinforcements rumble over the horizon, hull down behind Ignatov's surviving crook, their 76mm guns trading salvos with Pak-40s. Paulus's panzers waver, fuel low, crews bailing under Sturmovik's strafing runs. Weber, bloodied in his hatch, radios retreat as 50-list Corps fractures. 40 more wrecks mark the field, the copied tactic exposed as fragile under air hammer. Ignatov's wall endures, beacon amid the slaughter. But Petrov takes a round gut shot, whispering of Siberian pines before going still. 2 sappers left. As Sturmoviks wheel for another pass, scouts hail from the east. Zhukov's shock troops crossing the Volga in force. The tide turns, but at what price? And will Ignatov's barrier birth a new evolution in the endless grind? Ignatov leans into the wind-whipped smoke, his last 2 sappers flanking him like shadows. Recruits Ivan and Misha, faces pale but grips iron on their rifles, eyes fixed on the Volga's shimmer where ferries groan under Zhukov's 39th Army shock troops. The Sturmoviks peel off eastward, spent brass raining like metallic hail, leaving Paulus's lines gutted. Panzer hulks belch black pillars, German barriers reduced to smoking furrows, engineers fleeing with half-packed sacks bouncing on their backs. You feel the shift in the air, the acrid tang of victory mingling with cordite, the distant cheers rising like a tide over the factory ruins, drowning the moans of the dying. Ignatov's wall, scarred but unbowed, funnels the survivors into kill pockets where T-34s prowl like wolves.
Forward for the motherland!
Ignatov roars, leading the charge across no man's land, boots crunching charred sand and bone. Zhukov's vanguard, bayonets gleaming, PPSH drums rattling, hits the German remnants like a hammer, overrunning Weber's command post in a blur of steel and shouts. The Oberleutnant falls, Luger spitting defiance, till a Soviet grenade paints the bunker red. Ignatov seizes a looted radio, barking coordinates to incoming artillery.
Fire on their rally points. Barriers first. Katyusha rockets whisper overhead. Stalin's organs shrieking as they saturate the south, turning copied walls into craters spewing limbs and steel. Paulus's 51 Corps buckles, panzers abandoning their dead innovations, retreating toward the tractor works in ragged columns. Hand-to-hand erupts amid the wreckage. Ignatov parries a grenadier's bayonet with his shovel, drives the spade through the man's throat in a spray of arterial heat. Ivan flames a bunker with a scavenged Flammenwerfer, Misha sniping officers from a wrecked panzer turret. The factory district flips. Soviet sappers now mimic the mimics, erecting hybrid barriers laced with German Teller mines against counterattacks. By midday, Chuikov's HQ crackles with triumph. Ignatov's gambit credited in dispatches, his design wired to every Red Army engineer along the front. But elation cracks. Misha crumples to a sniper's round, eyes glazing as he clutches a locket with his daughter's faded photo. Ivan weeps silently, down to one. Ignatov stands atop his wall, Volga mist cloaking the horizon, as scouts report the noose tightening, 8th Army and 1st Guards pinching Paulus's flanks. The Germans dig feverishly, evolving barriers yet again, triple-layered with concrete revetments, anti-tank ditches deepened. Whispers from captured pioneers confirm it. OKH circulars praise the Rusin engineer's wall, mandating copies from Leningrad to Libya. Ignatov's creation circles the globe, a double-edged sword. Night falls with flares and probes, the grind unrelenting. But as T-34 engines rumble closer, massing for the pocket's crush, Ignatov wonders, has his sandbag stopped the tanks? Or just forged better killers for the long war ahead? Ignatov slumps onto the blood-crusted sandbags, the weight of survival pressing heavier than any panzer track. His lone companion Ivan, binding a shrapnel tear in his calf with strips from a dead grenadier's tunic. The Volga's eastern bank pulses with life now. Ferries disgorging endless waves of Zhukov's shock troops, their cheers a thunderous counterpoint to the fading German cries echoing from encircled pockets. You smell the tide turning, wet earth from massed artillery prep, diesel from T-34 columns coiling like serpents, the fate rot of Paulus's army trapped in their own ruins, barriers useless against starvation and steel. Ignatov's wall, pockmarked sentinel, channels the final probes into oblivion, its crook design now etched in every Soviet engineer's mind. Soviet armor surges at dusk. 200 T-34s and KVs thundering over the Volga bridges, smashing through the Germans' triple-layered mocks like cardboard. Katyushas prelude the charge, turning barricades into flaming graveyards. Ignatov joins the vanguard, riding a loned T-34's rear deck, PPSH barking at shadows as they overrun the tractor works. Paulus's pioneers fight fanatically, stacking final walls laced with every mine and charge. But Soviet sappers, trained on Ignatov's playbook, flank and undermine, bringing them down in cascades of sand and screams. Weber's successor, a Hauptmann from the 16th Panzer, dies in his cupola, radioing futile pleas to the Führer as rockets core his beast. The pocket seals. 300,000 Germans caged, their copied tactics mocking them in the trap they helped perfect. House-to-house vengeance consumes the night. Ignatov clears a basement nest, grenades rolling like thunder, emerging with a captured OKW manual stamped Russen Barrikade, Studie und Anwendung. It details his exact dimensions, silt ratios, even crook angles, disseminated to every front from Tunisia to the Caucasus. Bitter triumph.
His brainchild fuels the fascist grind elsewhere, but here it breaks them. Ivan falls at dawn, shielding Ignatov from an MG-42 burst. His last whisper, a curse for the Fritzes who stole their edge. Alone now, Ignatov stands amid the dead as Chuikov pins the gold star to his tunic. Volga whines, scattering sand from the wall that saved Stalingrad. Paulus surrenders weeks later, his army ghosts in snow, barriers forgotten in mass graves. Ignatov's design lives on. Red Army doctrine, Wehrmacht field manuals. But the engineer vanishes into the counteroffensive. Just another name in the motherland's ledger. Sand stopped tanks once. Then it changed the war forever.